I am here to introduce Stacy Morse. Stacy Morse is a time-traveling immortal who programs with Python and builds things that blink. She is a freelancer and contractor who builds web applications. This allows her to work on personal Python projects, such as a handheld programmable LED array for lighting photographs. Previous talks include Python microservices, where she gave an academic approach to converting a monolithic application into microservices. Show Me What You Got, where she tried to convince her hound dog to show her what she has in her mouth which she knows she shouldn't have. If you can't recognize her accent, it's okay. She was raised in the tiniest state of Rhode Island in the United States, a place where they don't include R's in the end of their words, and they call water fountains bubblas. Please give her a warm welcome.
Okay, so you know who I am now. This is all of my information to contact me, harass me, ask me questions, whatever. And I will be talking about code reviews using art critique principles. So, Stacy, you're a Python programmer, and you have an art degree. I've been working in tech on and off for the past 20 years, and I say on and off because it's been on and off. I started my career as the art director for one of the first ISPs, so now you know how old I am because we used dial-up. And yes, I have an art degree. So I would say that most of you know what code reviews are, so I'm not going to talk about the meaning of a code review. If you don't know what a code review is, you should probably familiarize yourself with it. But this is where we're going to start. Now, not so many people know what art critiques are. And as I went to school and went through the grueling process of getting a degree in art, I know what art critiques are. So quickly, art critiques are the process that are used in art schools to teach students how to talk about art and how to improve it. So I deal with a lot of people coming to me and saying, Stacy, I hate everybody I work with. They're all jerks, they're mean, and they do the worst code reviews you could possibly imagine. And as I give them a treat and say, it's going to be okay, we'll go beat them up later, I started thinking, you know, you went through this whole process of learning how to critique art. It's very much like writing code. It's a very artistic process. Maybe you should apply that. So I started doing some research, and I read a lot of blogs where people say, no, I am not doing code reviews anymore. I'm done. We're not going to do it as a practice. We're just going to throw our code out there and hope for the best. That terrifies me. But hey, I can't fault people for being upset about a process. And this is what I imagine when I read those blog posts every single time. And they express the worst hatred you could possibly imagine when they talk about the code review process. And I feel that I can fix this. And no, this is not a trap. I really think that I can fix this. So I have made my own methodology, because anybody who's anyone has a methodology. You should make your own methodologies. So art critiques have been around for hundreds of years. I'd say thousands, but I'm going to be conservative and say hundreds. And it's developed into a sound process that we use in the classroom for art education. I've always been a highly technical person. You could ask my mom about how I dismantled her blender when I was 2 and how horrifying that was. And I love process. And art is very process-driven. You should take an art class, you will see. And code and art are very similar. I feel programming is an art form, and it takes a lot of creativity to solve problems we can solve in elegant ways. Think about how happy you get when you see somebody that solves a problem in an extremely creative and elegant way. You get happy. I've seen your eyes light up watching other people's talks of how they've solved this problem. It's an amazing feeling, and coding is artistic. You can fight me on this, but I'm right. And because I've read so many heartbreaking posts about code reviews, I wanted to take my experience and mesh what I know to the code review process. So we get to the point where when you were in art school, they would tell you, if you can't talk about art, you have no idea what you're doing. So you have to be able to explain what it is you're doing, what you're seeing in all of this. And the same goes for code. I can't tell you how many countless people I've known can't explain what their code does. I feel like, well, maybe they just went to Stack Overflow and cut and paste everything. And that's terrifying, but you can't fault some people. So we get to this point where happy accidents. Some people that program depend on them, just like people in art depend on happy accidents, and that is not how you should produce anything. I love Bob Ross, and I will not accept happy accidents in my code and anybody's code, any code that I will deal with. Because you'll get lucky once in a while, but just once in a while. So let's get on to what it is that I'm here for, the goals. Honestly, I care about you. I care about all of you, and obviously because you're here, you're my favorite people. You're better than everybody else at this conference. Don't tell them I said that, but you are the most attractive, best, amazing people in the entire world because you like Python and because you're here right now. And I am not biased at all. So these are my goals. This is what I want to accomplish by having this methodology. And it makes me really sad every time somebody comes to me and says, I've had the worst experience you could possibly imagine. I don't want to hear that anymore. I mean, don't stop you from telling me, but it breaks my heart, and I can only deal with so much heartbreak. So these are my goals, and we're going to move on to the core of my methodology. So how do we achieve this? By having a process. Process is awesome. So there are 4 elements to this process, and this is not a typo. There are only 3 things on there, and I know that. And I've left the 4th to the side because people start worrying about the 4th, and I don't want you to worry about the 4th right now, so we'll talk about the 4th after. So we're going to start with the rules, because before you can start the process, you have to institute rules. Rules help keep order, and you need order in a code review. You can't just throw code at someone and say, check this over and everything will be okay. That leads to disaster. And I also know that artists are chaotic, and programmers can also be chaotic. How many times have you had a legacy system dropped in your lap with no information at all, and people just say, you got this, you're good? You don't want that. And you don't want to deal with the code reviews that come with dealing with the legacy thing when you're adding stuff to it or trying to take care of it. And so we have these rules in art school, and they're quite important. It starts off with respect. And this encompasses not just a level of respect for your coworkers, but for yourself, your company, your project, your community. Respect is important. And a lot of people will be like, yeah, I respect everybody I work with, but I know that some of you think in your mind, or you have a dev rant account. Don't you think that I don't know? But this also means respect to the process. You have to respect the process that you're using. So if you're going to use my methodology, please respect it. Be prepared. I shouldn't have to tell you to be prepared. You shouldn't have to worry about, you should know as an adult that you should be prepared to come into a code review. This is part of the rules, but I put it in here anyway because you'd be surprised how many people come flying in the room saying, here, review my code. I have no idea what it's doing. Really important is speaking in neutral terms. Nothing kills a conversation faster than negativity, perceived or otherwise. Now I'm working on a talk that involves non-neurotypical people on spectrum, and how to deal with that. And that's going to be a talk that I'm going to give at another conference, and kind of excited about it. Now this is the 4th element, but we're not going to really talk about it. It's in the rules, and it has to be here so you can see that it's there. And we'll talk about constructive criticism after. You have to stay on point and focused. When you're doing a code review, you don't want to get distracted with other things. You're doing a code review, just that code. You're not worrying about anything else. If you're reviewing code, you're reviewing the code that you have been given, period. This is the one that I love the most. Mandatory participation. This is not mandatory participation. This is an emoji. I don't know how many times people have told me, this is my code review. This is what I got in Slack when I submitted my code for a review. That's it, right there, just thumbs up. No other input. That's horrifying. That makes me make this face. You don't want me to make this face. This equals this. I don't like making this face. I might actually get a t-shirt with it on it because I'm tired of making that face. So we go from the rules, which we've set up, and once the rules are set up, that's it. We don't have to think about them anymore. They're in our heads, they're the rules, it's how we do things. Now we have to go into a pre-code review. The person submitting the code to be reviewed has a responsibility. If they don't complete their part of the process, the rest isn't going to work. So this is what the pre-code review, as far as an art critique stand, these are the things that we would do in an art critique to make sure that we're all on the same page. It makes sense for programmers to do this when submitting a code review. I mean, you don't want to have somebody send you code and you have no idea what it is. So you need to meet these requirements for sending your code up for actual review. Do not forget to run relevant testing. You all know what relevant testing is. I always feel like I have to nag at people when they say, well, that's not my responsibility. The testing is your responsibility before. You want to make sure your code works. You don't want to look like a jerk. You want to make sure your code works. You don't want to give it to somebody else and have them hate you because you didn't fulfill your requirements as a programmer. So we go through the pre-code review, and it's a bunch of stages. And again, once we've instituted this, it's not going to take extra time. It's not going to be where you have to go through each of these stages. This should just become natural to you as a programmer. It's just like breathing. With this and with the rules, an organization can add to it, but if you take anything away, you're going to start, the process isn't going to work. So add some stuff to it. Don't go crazy, but try to keep what's here and use these steps for the rules and for your pre-code review. And don't forget, your code needs to be ready for the review. Not half ready, not it's due right now. Maybe I can just slip it by them and they won't realize that I've made a big boo-boo and I haven't tested or I haven't done the things that's required. No, it has to be ready for review. You don't want your coworkers plotting to grind you up in a chum and throwing you into the ocean. Because I know that we all have times when we think about doing just that. My dramatic pause where I get a glass of water. Excuse me. Okay, it's not a dramatic pause, but it's a pause nonetheless. So the last two parts of the process are set up and established and will only need to be revisited when you add a new person to your organization. When they come on, you should be giving them information on how your organization works. You don't want to bring somebody in and be like, maybe we should give them some tools to be just enough dangerous that they can wipe out all of our databases because we didn't give them the proper, tutorials and everything they need to set stuff up. I've read plenty of horror stories where data has been massively lost because no one took the time to walk a junior dev through really important information. I mean, you're only hurting yourself. And if you want to stay up all night fixing the junior dev stuff, that's on you. I don't want to. So how is the actual review process? How does that actually go? So I'm calling it a code critique now. If anybody has a better name and want to volunteer it, as an artist, I can probably make you something really awesome to give you for the name. But this is what I'm calling it for now. And the code critique stages are as follows. So there are 4 stages. And this is exactly how we go through and critique art. Now, they're slightly different. Obviously, reviewing code isn't the same as reviewing some metal sculpture that somebody just drug in from metal shop and stuck on the floor and probably cut 3 people in the process. It's a little bit different, but the main steps are the same and they do apply. So part of the description is we have the, we identify the work, and then we make an inventory. Now, there are 2 groups of people. There are programmers that do everything digital, and they've never looked at a piece of paper again in their life. And then there are people like me who like to have 400 notebooks on their desk and can't find anything because there's so much paper. But you have to make some sort of inventory. So when you make this inventory, you're using neutral terms. You're not going, look what this jerk did. You're looking at the code to make sure that each element is there, because you should know what exactly needs to be there. They're just writing the lines of code for you. You should have an idea of, yes, that's that. Yes, that's complete. Yes, that has everything it is. Yes, that's pointing at the right place. We're good. So you write this inventory, or you mentally have this inventory, however you want to do it. I really suggest writing it down, and I'll tell you later why. And I'm not going to tell you how to make the actual inventory, but write it down, document it somehow. It's important. So aside from assembling a thorough inventory of the code, the description stage serves an important purpose for the reviewer, because this is where we can get an agreement. Have you ever sat in a room and had a bunch of people trying to review code and everybody's looking at something different, all complaining at the same time? Don't do that. Make the inventory, get a consensus, and hit each part at a time. I mean, you can complain about all of the code, but at least do it organized and together. Teamwork. So disagreement comes when people aren't on the same page, because if you're looking at two different things, you're talking about two different things, nobody's getting anything done, and you're costing your company money. And if you cost your company enough money, they show you the door. So in this stage, it's vital to keep the description neutral. The programmer submitting the code has followed the rules, they've done their pre-code review, and that means that their code works and it meets the minimum requirements. It might not be as fancy as you want, it might not have all the things that you would put in it, but at this point it should work. And if it doesn't work, why are we reviewing it? You should send them to a room to think about what they've done. On a quick side note, I've run into this twice, and I don't understand why it's happened. But why would you ever have a C programmer reviewing Python code that's never looked at Python code? That doesn't make much sense to me. So when you're doing a review, have at least one person know what's going on that can review the code. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being a C programmer. I like Python, personally. But you don't want them, reviewing code that is not what they're, proficient in. It's not what they know. I mean, that's a little crazy. And I will not call out where that's happened, and I will not tell anybody, so don't ask. So after the description, we move on to the analysis stage. And this is where we have to go beyond the inventory, where we have taken the description, all of our inventory. And we start to talk about the relationships of the code, how it works on its own and how it will work with other code. Does the code function well? Will the code work with existing code? These steps have many benefits. The main ones are the complete examination of the code. Now, when people start talking about legacy code, it's usually this horrific look on their face. They start crying, they curl up in a ball, and then they just lay there for a while, and you know that they felt the pain of dealing with legacy code that had nothing to do with them. You can keep this from happening if you perform code reviews where there's at least one other person involved that's seeing all the stuff, that has a complete examination of the code. You have someone else's eyes that understands what's going on. The more people that know, the more people that have a complete examination of the code, the better, which is why I say write those inventories down, document them somewhere, know what the code does. It's for your benefit. Another benefit is building skills and observation. So the more you do this, the faster you get at it. And the faster you get at it, the less of a pain it becomes. And one more important benefit, through thorough examination of the code, through this examination, we build an understanding and we know what the code does. So there's no surprises, there's no horror. Sorry, little flashback from some horror. So, we complete our analysis. We've determined how it's going to work with anything that we have existing, how it's going to work when we put it out into the wild. And we've made a list of possible fixes in case there's a problem. So now we can move on to our interpretation. This is when we would make suggestions. in a constructive manner as to any changes that need to be made to the code. This stage is an opportunity that arises, and the opportunity is often missed. It's a chance to make ourselves better developers, better leaders, to use mentorship to benefit the company and the community. It will improve everything. If a person walks away from a code review feeling emotionally and verbally beaten, they start to lose their love of programming. They burn out. They don't want to do it anymore. They open a cupcake shop. Now that's fine. I would love to open a cupcake shop. But you're taking away something that somebody did have a passion for at some point by giving them a brutal, harsh review. There's really no reason for it. And those disgruntled, low morale employees, they're not going to produce any more, quality code. They're going to keep producing crap after that. And they're not going to care, because while they're sitting there shopping online, they're also going to be looking for another job and just pulling a paycheck until it's time to bail. So then we get to the final stage. Oh, the final stage. And we ask the question, and it only has two answers. Can the code ship? If it can ship it, send it out. If not, fix it. If you have massive problems with how they have constructed their code, and let's say they're a junior developer, pull them aside and talk to them about it. Say, you've made some really poor choices. Let's go over what you could do better, because I want you to be a better developer. I want you to be able to contribute. I want you to grow your skills, and have a discussion with them about it. So if you can't ship it, if the answer to the question is no, then you're going to have to fix it. Now, in art school, when you fix something, you have to go through the process all over again. But for the sake of time, I would agree that it would be okay to just put a set of eyes over what's been resubmitted, because we've already reached a consensus that the rest of the code is okay, where we're going with it is okay, that it's been tested, and we can just check to make sure the fix works at this point. So that's it. That's the 4 stages of reviewing code. Now, a lot of people would, I don't want to take all that time. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to move on to constructive criticism, because this is my favorite part. This is the part where people know what constructive criticism is, or at least they think they know what constructive criticism is, but you have a hard time putting it into practice. So constructive criticism is not a compliment sandwich. That's not what it is. A compliment sandwich is a compliment sandwich, and it's not very tasty. So constructive criticism, when I first went into art school, they told us, look, you're a bunch of students. You don't know anything. So you can just drop that ego at the door and sit down and learn something. Now, we're all adults. We're professionals. We do know some stuff. But still, leave the ego at the door. Let's keep the ego for, fun things like darts or like drinking contests or, any other thing where ego is, appropriate. Constructive criticism is hard. Getting criticism is just as much part of this whole thing as giving it. You have to know how to be tactful and talk to people, but you also have to know that you're going to hear things that you don't want to hear. People are going to say, I have a better solution for that. And you're going to be like, no, I just spent 3 weeks on this. How dare you? It's going to happen, and you have to be able to embrace the fact that somebody else is going to know more than you. Because in this room, we have a collective massive amount of brain power, but I would guarantee that not a single person knows every single in and out of Python. And we have to appreciate the fact that we don't know every single last little bit of Python, and we have to be able to rely on each other. So this is where it comes in, where you have to be able to give and take criticism. I can talk about criticism all day. If you want to talk about it with me more, sure, no problem. So, This is so much work. Can I just give the thumbs up and be done? No. When I was in school, we were on a time limit as well. Yes, we're a bunch of art students. We're just making some pictures. It's not a big deal. We don't have a whole bunch of users. Nobody cares about what you art students think about. But we were efficient in what we did. We would have 20 students submitting 5 pieces each, and we would have to critique all of it in an hour. Art students won't shut up. You have no idea how hard it is to get one of them to stop talking about their own stuff. And we had this process. We would use this process in order to get through it, in order to better our art, in order to learn and experience and share ideas and make ourselves better artists. Sure, most of us are still starving, but, you know, that's why I'm a programmer. So I'm going to wrap it up now. And the man who actually wrote a really great book about the whole art critique process, his name is Edmund Feldman. And I'm not going to talk about the quote that I actually put up here. I mean, I think that's actually quite powerful, and it's something I might actually have either tattooed or put on a t-shirt and just wear it all the time. But what I am going to leave you with is something else that he said. One mark of an educated person is the ability to recognize and evaluate excellence independently. This ability, however, does not come from memorizing lists of so-called masterpieces. It comes from developing sound procedures for analyzing and interpreting art, and then applying those procedures as well as you can. That's what I want to do with my methodology. I want to make sound procedures, and I want to apply them to code, because I want people to be happy. I'm tired of hearing all these horrible things. I want to hear about awesome projects. I want to get excited with you. I want to be like, yes, let's do something really awesome. Let's go solder a couple LEDs together and make it blink. I want the code review process to be bearable. If not bearable, enjoyable. Because unlike a lot of people, I enjoy code reviews and I enjoy testing. And yes, I'm a freak. So that's my talk. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, PyCon.
We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Okay.
Thanks very much. It's great to have a different angle on something that a lot of us are already practicing. To flip it back around on you,
sure.
I noticed that your criticism of the thumbs up emoji did not actually have much constructive content.
The thumbs up does not deserve any constructive criticism. It is a horrible way to review code, and I will not apologize for my hatred of that emoji when it comes to being just slammed into Slack for the equivalent of a code review.
All right.
I'm sorry, I'm unyielding on that one.
Fair enough, too. One last question here.
Sure.
Closely related. Sometimes you have to give a hard no. How do you give a hard no within these constraints?
This is where it comes back to people have to understand that they're going to have to hear things that they don't want to hear. And you have to talk to your employees. You have to talk to the people you work with. People have to understand that life is not all flowers and puppies and like really great, awesome things. It's going to be painful, but you can make that pain easier by being open and honest and having a really open, good dialogue with people. And if you try to teach them while you're saying, no, that's not going to work, but let me show you something awesome. If you get somebody excited about something, when you're telling them no, they kind of forget about the no. They kind of forget about what they were attached to. That answer? Awesome. Yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, thanks. You know what? You owe me a beer. New rule.
All right. That is all the time we have. The next session begins in 10 more minutes, but please, let's give Stacey one more round of applause.
Really quick, because I'm from America and my mom has been bugging the crap out of me. If you don't want to be in a video, you can leave real quick, but she keeps saying, are you really doing a talk? So if everybody would say, hi, Ma. Thank you.